Hello folks, so I totally did not just record two videos with no audio. Um, it turns out that we can actually use a graph to find the input or output of a function. So let's do that in this video. In red here, this is the graph of, let's do it in red. This is the graph of f of x. That's what this red graph is. And it looks funky, but if we just remember, we spent a couple videos talking about equations or graphs of this equation, like y equals x squared plus 2x minus 3 or something like that, right? And so if I just change this into now, because we know y is the output, f of x equals this, then you can still create an xy table and draw the graph. And so that's essentially what happened here. It's just some weird type of graph, but that's okay. It still serves its purpose. Alrighty, so pay no attention to the fact that the graph looks funky. Alrighty, so if the question I'm asking is what is f of -1, how can I use the graph to actually answer that question? Well, let's think about what the question is actually asking first, because again, we can't answer the question if we don't know what it is. Okay, so I think you should take a minute or a second here, pause the video, and write down what does this actually ask you to do. I'm going to assume that you just paused the video and tried it out, but to me, I believe the question this is asking is, if the input is x equals 1, what is the output? Because again, the input here, that 1 inside the parentheses is just the input, in this case x, right? And so if we know how input and output work, and then we also know how input and output are shown on a graph, then we can put the pieces together. So let's remind ourselves where we see the input and output on the graph. If we remember our horizontal axis, that's where we put our x, or more generally, the independent variable. Independent variable. And now I'm always double checking my computer to make sure I'm actually recording audio. And on the vertical axis, we have our, not the independent, but the opposite, the dependent variable. And again, we call it the dependent variable because it depends on what x is. And that's usually how we see it. Another way to look at these independent versus dependent is that the independent variable is often, again, called our output. And the y, or the dependent variable, is our, I think I said that wrong. Our independent variable is our input. And the dependent variable is our output, because what comes out depends on what went in the top. Okay, so now we can just see here, actually, hey, the input is x equals 1. So let's go over to x equals 1, which would be right there. And then we just have to go up to where we see the graph. So I'm just going to go up, up, up until I get to the point right here. And what's that y coordinate? That's going to be, it looks like 1, 2, 3. And so this point right here is the point 1, 3. And we talked about, I know we talked about graphing and how to find plot points in the previous video, excuse me. But another way to look at this is, hey, when I plugged in 1 into, or when I input x equals 1 into this function machine f of x, what was it? And so the way we write down the input into your function machine, if the input is 1, we write that f of 1. Because again, f of 1 represents, like, if I said over here, f of 1 equals 10, this sentence means that the input, the output when when the input is 1 is 10. Sorry, I was thinking about another way to write that. So when you plug 1 into this function, it gives you 10. That was just an example. But if I go back to the original problem, we know now hey, when I plug in 1, I feed 1 into my function machine, out comes 3. And so this is pretty much where we see our answer. Like, we could do that for any point on this graph. So for example, I can go over here. I'll do this one in green. If I go to -1 and then find the graph, so I'm gonna have to go up for this one, up to, it looks like 4. This point right here, that is, well, I plugged in -1, and the output is whatever the output is when I feed it -1. But also we could look at just what it is on the graph, and that's the point -1, 4. Therefore, f of -1 is equal to 4. Okay, so that's how you can use the graph to find the output if you know what the input is. And so I guess we should answer this question. F of 1 is equal to 3 in this case. We can talk one more question here. Is let's ask the reverse question. So that would be something like this. F of x equals, how about 2? Okay, and we can see here, now I'm not giving you the input, I'm giving you the output. So the question that's being asked is what inputs, or inputs, because it's totally possible to have more than one input create the same output. Create an output of 2, we said. So that's what the question, that's what this is asking us. And so now if it's an output of 2, that's really just saying when does y equal 2? That's what we're more used to seeing possibly. And so let's look, I'm going to clean this up a little bit. So let's see, y equals 2, excuse me, is right there. And so we just have to take our ruler and see, okay, where does the graph hit a y value of 2? And I'll draw a dashed line here. Kind of it's a little off, but we'll worry about that later. And it looks like, how many points does it hit that? It looks like 3 times. So there's 1 there, 1 there, and 1 there that we kind of already saw earlier. And so now we can see, okay, this is the point. Let's see, it's about, let's see, -3, so maybe -3.2. -3.2, comma 2. But another way to write this would be, hey, when you input -3.2, this is what we got. And so we would say that f of -3.2 is equal to 2. And we can do that for these other 2 points here. So maybe I should do this in green actually. Right here, this would be about 1.4 maybe. 1.4, comma 2. And this last one over here, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this would be 5, comma 2. And so these green ones, altogether we have, let's see, we know that, let me erase this, sorry. We have f of -3.2 equals to f of about 1.4 equals 2, and f of 5 equals 2. So altogether, this tells us inputs of -3.2, 1.4, and 5 create outputs. Create an output of 2. Alrighty. So in the first case, we were given the input and we want to find the output. And so that's like saying, here's the x coordinate. What is the y coordinate, essentially? The opposite case, if you're given the output and you're asked for the input, well, you're basically saying, here's the y coordinate. How many points, or what points, sorry. here's the y coordinate. Find the points with the proper x coordinate. Right? Input is x or horizontal. Output is y or vertical on the graph. Okay, so hopefully this video helped, and hopefully you can actually hear it this time. I'll catch you all later. Thanks for watching.